Shalom, all praise to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, double line to the apostles of GMS. This is Amnawah Allah coming at you with another video. And in this video, I want to focus on, being tempted by the spiritual demon Satan. Now, there's a lot of scriptures I can go into in this topic. But I'll make this brief. But now that I think about it, this is something I want to do a deeper topic on. But we'll see if the Spirit permits. And the reason why I want to go into this is because, temptation in its truth is a real thing. I'm saying temptation in its truth is a real thing. You know what I mean? Being tempted by the spiritual demon Satan. That's something that brothers may overlook. They may think it's all about, knowing deep scriptures, coming out the camp, doing shows. All that's great, but you got to pray that you don't enter into temptation. Let's go to the book of Matthew, the 26th chapter, and the 41st verse. Watch and pray. Now let's look at that word watch. Matter of fact, let's see if we can look at the word watch in Greek. Maybe it'll give us some more. Gregorio.
Strong's G, 1127. Gregoreo.
To watch, metaphorically, give strict attention to, be cautious, active, take heed, lest through remission and indolence some destructive calamity suddenly overtake one. So when it says to watch, what it means is to give strict attention to. And what is it that we give strict attention to? We give strict attention to the things around us by way of, such as what? Current events. The reason why that's important, you may say, well, what do you mean current events? Because the Lord gave us signs of His coming. In Matthew the 24th chapter, I spoke about it being earthquakes in diverse places, wars and rumors of wars. These are signs that the Lord's coming. But we also have to watch in regards to being circumspect. Being circumspect meaning to look around. So we got to look around us and be aware of our surroundings, such as what's going on in the brotherhood, in the camp, in truth. We got to look and we got to be aware. You know what I'm saying? We got to see certain things. We got to observe. We got to examine different things around us and come to conclusions about certain situations. So we got to watch. That's very important. It says to take heed lest through remission and indolence. Look at the word remission. It says, let me see. Now, remission is many different definitions. There's a medical definition. Remission in the context of illness, particularly cancer, refers to a period where the signs and symptoms of disease have decreased or disappeared, often in response to treatment. That's the medical definition. But when you read a little bit down, it says in vocabulary.com, it says remission refers to a stage of lesser intensity when something subsides or improves, like when I mentioned with cancer. So less through remission, or in other words, through lesser intensity. So when a person is showing lesser intensity, they aren't as fervent, they aren't as hot, they don't have that strong desire. And indolence means disinclination to exertion, habitual laziness or idleness. And that word remission, I read, that's from AI overview, as well as the word indolence. Those are from AI overview, the definitions. But remission is a state of lesser intensity, and indolence meaning laziness, and to be habitually inactive. So to take heed, and look at the word heed. Heed, pay careful attention to. That's from AI overview. Pay careful attention to, or take notice of something, often advice, warnings, or instructions. So to take heed, go back here, meaning pay careful attention to or take notice. Take heed or pay attention carefully, right? To pay attention to or notice. Lest through remission, you're in a state of lesser severity. In other words, you're in a state of no longer being as fervent as you once were. as hot, having the strong desire you once had, and indolence, you are habitually lazy and inactive. Some destructive calamity suddenly overtake one. That can happen. So we have to watch. I mean, we got to take heed. We got to pay close attention to, lest through remission, less through lesser severity, through lesser um through a lesser desire, and through indolence, our laziness, a destructive calamity may overtake us. So we got to watch to prevent that from happening. So we got to take heed and notice these things around us. Lest through our own laziness, through our own inactivity, a calamity overtakes us. So you always got to keep that in mind. Always got to keep that in mind. Yeah, man. So we have to watch and pray. That's self-explanatory. Pray. We got to call on upon the Most High in the name of His Son, and ask for strength. So we got to watch and pray. We got to watch the things around us. Because if we don't watch, we're not taking heed. If we're not taking heed, we're not paying attention to it. If we're not paying attention, then we're being inactive. That ye enter not into temptation. And we got to pray that we enter not into temptation. Now, what's that word, temptation?
Strong's G 3986. Pyrasmas.
Pyrasmas. There's a lot of definitions here, but I'll go right down here. It says, temptation, i.e. trial of God by men. Rebellion against of God, or the Most High, but which is power and justice all, as it were, put to the proof and challenge to show themselves. Let's see, okay, here you go. Temptation. The first number 2, the trial of man's fidelity or faithfulness, integrity, virtue, constancy, and enticement to sin, temptation, whether arising from the desires or from outward circumstances. So we got to watch and pray lest we fall into temptation, man. Lest we fall into the enticement of sin. Number 3, of the condition of things or a mental state by which we are enticed to sin or to a lapse from the faith and holiness. See that? So guess what? When you're being tempted, that puts you in a lapse. That causes you to lapse from the faith and from holiness. So we got to watch and pray so that we don't fall into temptation. Now let's go back real fast. It said fall. That he enter not into temptation. I wonder what that word enter means.
Strong's G 1525. Eis ergamai. Eis ergamai.
Of thoughts that come into the mind. See that? That you enter not into temptation. You enter temptation when those thoughts come into your mind. See, look, number 2, it said, that was number 2 at the bottom, but number 2 right here says, of Satan taking possession of the body of a person. See that? So you can have God that got Satan on him and you don't even know. You don't even know, man. You know what I'm saying? Watch and pray that you enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. So the spirit is willing. The spirit wants to do what's right. The spirit wants to please the Most High. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. But the flesh is weak. Your flesh is weak. Because the bodies that we have causes us to fall weak and fall into temptation at times. So we got to watch and pray to build up our spirit. Okay? You got to be able to build up your spirit so that when you have those battles between the flesh and the spirit is what prevails. So you got to watch, you got to pray, you got to fast if you have to. Because that's going to happen. We're going to have these battles between the spirit and between the flesh. But our spirit wants to do what is right and the flesh wants to do what is wrong. You're going to have those battles. And you want to watch and you want to pray so that you don't fall into temptation. Because our spirit is willing, but our flesh is weak. So being that our flesh is weak, we gotta watch and pray that we don't fall to the temptations of the flesh. You know? This is the book of 2 Corinthians 13 and 5. Examine yourselves. What does the word examine mean?
Strong's G 3985. Pyrazzo.
Pyrazzo. Examine. Okay. To try, make trial of, test for the purpose of ascertaining his quality, or what he thinks, or how he will behave himself. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, so it says to try, make trial of, test for the purpose of ascertaining his quality, or what he thinks, or how he will behave himself. Look at the word ascertaining, or ascertain. It means finding out, from AI overview, means finding out or determining something with certainty, often through investigation or examination. It involves making sure of something or establishing something as a fact. So, when we examine ourselves, we are making a trial of ourselves, or we are testing ourselves to the purpose of ascertaining or finding out our quality, or what he thinks, or how he will behave himself. In other words, we are to examine ourselves to see if what it is that we're doing is aligned with the scriptures. What it is that we're doing is aligned with the obedience of the word of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. To see if we're actually abiding in the calling that we are called in. To see if we're actually doing what it is that we are called to do. So guess what? You got to look into the scriptures. Okay, I'm doing that. Check. I'm doing this. Check. I'm doing this. Check. You understand what I'm saying? That I don't literally mean you got to open the Bible and write a check next to everything that you're doing. What I mean by that is you got to examine yourself in your own mind. Am I really doing what's right? It's like a person, you know, who plays basketball, and they got to examine this, or they got to ask themselves, or boxers, or does any sport, they got to ask themselves, am I doing enough? I should be in the gym 5 in the morning. Why am I getting at 8 o'clock? I should be the first guy in the gym, last guy out the gym. I've been here working out, been here for an hour. I ain't breaking sweat yet. I'm not working that hard enough. You know, you a boxing, you hitting that heavy bag, but you're hitting the heavy bag at 20% of your power. You're not going to hit it 100% of power every punch, but you're going to have to hit it hard for a while if you want to build up your muscle, if you want to build up your cardio. You got to say to yourself, I'm not trying hard enough. You know what I'm saying? You're a boxer, you in that ring, you in there with an opponent that's not backing up. He tough. You got to ask yourself, am I really game for this? Am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing? You start to question yourself. So you got to examine yourself. You got to say, did I really train hard enough? Did I spar enough rounds? Did I run enough miles? You got to examine yourself, man. You got to check yourself to make sure that you're doing what needs to be done in the field of sports. It could be anything. You got to question. You got to say to yourself, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And that's what we got to do in this thing. Because if you're not examining yourself, them demons can overtake you, man, and cause you to fall out. Examine yourself whether you be in the faith. So you got to examine yourself if you're really in the faith or not. That's what we examine ourselves to do. I gave examples of sports just to give you an idea, so for you to be able to better understand. But ultimately, what it is that we're doing is we examine ourselves to whether we be in the faith. So you got to examine yourself if you're really doing what the scriptures say do. Prove your own selves. How do we prove our own selves? By actually being living proof that we're doing what the scriptures say do. That's how you prove your own selves, by actually doing it. That's how it's proven, okay, this person is in the faith. You know, he watches and he prays. The demons coming on him, he fasts. He doing his lessons, he coming out to teach. You know, He being brotherly. He doing the thing the scriptures say do. Know ye not your own selves? Yeah, don't you know your own selves? You should know your own self. Your strengths, your weaknesses, what it is you gotta work on. What it is you don't need to work on as much. So you should know your own self. Look at the word reprobate.
Strong's G96, Adakimas.
Adakimas. Not standing the test, not approved, properly use of metals and coins, that which does not prove itself such as it ought, or such as it should, in other words, unfit for, unproved, spurious, reprobate. So it's saying, examine yourself whether ye be in the faith, prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves, how that Yahweh Shah, the anointed, is in you, except ye be reprobates. Except you be reprobates meaning what? Unless you be unapproved. Because we look at the word reprobate, and what did it say? Unproved. That which does not prove itself such as it ought, not standing the test, unapproved. So, you ought to examine ourselves whether we in the faith, and we ought to prove ourselves. We ought to show and prove that we're actually doing what the scriptures say do. Know ye not your own selves? Don't you know your own selves? How that Yahweh Shah is in you? So you're supposed to know your own self. You're supposed to know that Yahweh Shah is in you. Except ye be reprobates, meaning except ye be unapproved, except you don't stand the test. So what it's saying is that if we don't examine ourselves and prove ourselves, then that's a sign that we are reprobates. I mean, that's a sign that we are not proven. That's a sign that we are unfit. That's a sign that we are not doing what it is that we're supposed to do. Because if we ought to know that Yahweh Shah is in us, if you don't know that Yahweh Shah is in you, then you're a reprobate. So we ought to examine ourselves to see if we're in the faith or not. And if you don't examine yourself, then you're proven to be reprobate. You're not fit for the test. You're not proven. Okay? You failed that test. Because when you go to that word examine, I went to that word earlier, it says to test. To make trial of, to test. So we ought to examine ourselves. And if you don't examine yourself, then that means you are reprobate. Because that shows that you have not stood up to that test of being proven as one of the Lord's followers, as one of the Lord's men. You haven't proven yourself. So it's important for us to examine ourselves. You got to rebuke the tempter, which is Satan. You know? There's so much more scriptures I wanted to get to, man, but I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to do more on this, Lord willing, through the Spirit of Yahweh Shem Yahshua. So with that, I'm going to close and say, hope you brother learn something. All praise to Yahweh Shem Yahshua. Hope you brother learn something. Shalom.